Hi everybody, how's the week going so far? How's the user testing going? Are you out there? Are you in coffee shops? Are you interviewing people? Well, if you are, you're doing the right thing. We are going to do that with the Guild Academy and a few of our products as well this week. So we will be there with you and, having the awkward conversations with some strangers, asking them if they can help us build an awesome product. But I wanted to take a quick moment and tell you about surveys. So a lot of people immediately jump to surveys, and it's something we learn in university a lot. There's empirical data. We want to be academic and go about it in an analytical way to understand if the problem we're solving is a real problem. And surveys can tell us sometimes, and it's also not as time intensive as doing user tests with people in coffee shops or at your offices or on the phone, right? So do the user tests first so you understand what you need to learn next, okay? So here is the general framework of a survey canvas. And I will tell you this, I teach a lot of students in design classes in universities here, and they all get it wrong, okay? It's really difficult to create a good survey that actually tells you something that you didn't know before, and that is not just a confirmation of your bias, but that actually unveils some new things about your users, okay? That's why the survey canvas is so important, and here is how it works. We're starting in this quadrant here, and what we're trying to write down here is what do we want to learn from our users? Who do we want to learn that from? What information do we already have? How do we reach those people? And then we start with the questions. So this is your hello, I'm a UX researcher, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm doing these things, blah, 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 blah. The second question is a screener question. Is the person you're asking actually the person that you identified over here? Then you start with all your different questions. And at the end you say thank you, and you give them a chance to sign up somewhere, so you capture who they are and their email address, because once you've built what they need, you definitely want their email address, okay? So let's go through an example. Say we want to create a wellness app, and it is a wellness app that gets you out of the house and involves nature and the city and a few features in your neighborhood to get people to do exercises. So what you want to learn about them right now is how do they exercise right now? Where do they live? What's currently not working for them with the exercise plan that they have? What competitors are they using? Are there any patterns? And those questions you put on a post-it and put them in the what do we want to learn kind of category. So perhaps you want to know the frequency, the reason, when, where they're exercising, and what type of exercise they're doing. And now we look at the people who we want to ask. So are you interested in asking people in rural America or Europe? Are you interested in asking people who live in the city? Are you interested in asking people of a certain age? Are you interested in asking people who are already going to the gym? So that's what you want to answer in here. So this might be a current gym goer between 30 and 50 years old in the city and relatively fit, okay? You don't want the people outside the city. So now, what information do we already have? We already know that for them it's important to exercise because they're gym goers, right? We already know they're in the city. We already know that their affinity for wellness is pretty high, okay? How do we reach those people? So obviously we could go to the gym, right? We could go to the gym and ask people at the gym. We could also ask if ClassPass would want to do a promotion with us. We could go to social networks that are focused on people who love fitness. So now in your survey, you're going to tell them who you are and what you're doing and why you're doing what you're doing, so they understand how they help you. And you don't want to already move them in a certain direction with all the stuff that you're saying here. So if you're already saying, hey, we're creating this app and it's this and that and the other, they might already be biased when they go through the questions, because in their mind maybe it's something they don't need, and then they will answer the questions biased. So you want to make sure you take the bias out of the process by just telling them in general who you are and why you do what you're doing. And then you start with your screener question. So the screener question could be, are you currently a gym member in this city? And then you really try to write questions down that are answering what you want to learn. So if you want to know exactly how often they work out and how often they would like to do that, then you ask, how often do you currently exercise, right? And you give them ranges. Maybe you want to give them 1 to 2 times a week, 2 to 3 times, and those things. If you give them a range, think about it. If everybody says 5 to 10 times, for instance, are you actually learning something? Or is it more important that they say 8 times versus 5 times versus 7 times? So don't give them a range if you want to know exactly the number. When you ask why questions, so why are they exercising right now, be sure that the information you got from the user interviews goes into that question, and you always give people another choice as well. So that the things you haven't talked about, you haven't thought about, you haven't heard in your user interviews, they have a chance to put that down. Because maybe you just don't know that a special kind of exercise is really what they're excited about, and that could be really, really important for you. But if you don't write that down in the why or the reasoning or the kinds of exercises they're doing, then you will miss out, because if they don't have another option here, they can't tell you anywhere. And if at the end you ask something like, oh, would you like to add anything else, they may have forgotten about that already. So you don't always have to ask a question that only has one answer. You can also ask questions where people have to rate a few things. So if you give them different kinds of exercises, right here, you can give them a scale from 1 to 10, where you ask them to rate, for instance, how likely or unlikely they are doing this exercise right now or would be doing this exercise. And perhaps it gives you really good insight here, because everybody is doing that one exercise and it's on the very high side. But make sure these are distinct enough so that you're actually getting information and it's answering one of the questions that you really want to learn about. Because you can ask a lot of different questions, and at the end of the day, it may not give you any kind of insights, right? We get answers, but the question is, are the answers insights, and does it help us build a better product or service company? I would always recommend to check in after you get 10 to 50 responses, so you understand either where people are jumping off, maybe one of the questions is unclear or it's too long, or nobody is answering the question here. So make sure you check in and see if people are actually completing this. So if you're using a SurveyMonkey or Typeform or any of those survey tools, you can see the completion rate, you can see how many minutes it takes them to go through the entire survey. You also see who gets to the thank you screen at the end. Of course, how many people start here, how many people end up here. And if you really want your most important question is back here, make sure you put your most important question in the beginning somewhere, in the first 5 questions. Make them required, and then sometimes it's a good idea to say, hey, can we ask you a few more questions or are you done? So it will help you to get those people to submit, to get to that screen, because if they don't submit, you don't get their answers. If they drop off, then you lose their responses. You also run the risk if you say, do you still have a few minutes to answer a few more questions? If they say no, and then you don't get their answers to these questions here, that it is better that way to give them an out earlier to capture those responses early on. At the end, make sure you say thank you. You make sure they know how they can get in contact and in touch with you, and then capture their email address. So you don't want them to add their email address to their particular response. You want them to add that email address somewhere else, okay? Because it needs to be anonymous, okay? So this is an anonymous survey, so it's unbiased. They know you don't know them, and they can be honest with their responses, but give them another landing page here where it's not tracked what they said in here. They can just put their email if they want the results. And it's very easy to build on a website. You can just put up any landing page, put an email address field in there and a submit button, and you get those email addresses, and they're opted into subscribing to your newsletter. And then once you're done, once you have a product, you can tell them, hey, you know, we're doing this cool new thing, and it's exactly what all our survey respondents have said that they want, and hopefully that was you as well. So now we have a great service for you. So that's the survey Canva. Make sure each one of the questions you're asking, put it through the test and see if it answers any of those questions over here. Make sure you send it to people where the people are that you actually want to get. It's a great exercise for marketing in the first place, because ultimately those people will also be the people that you are going to market to once your product is ready. And then tell them who you are, why you're doing what you're doing. Make sure there's a good screener here. You know, if this is a service that's only for women, for instance, make sure you know these are women that are answering the question, a certain demographic, a certain background, a certain age or whatever. Make sure you ask those screener questions here, and then go through all these questions. Make sure you have a nice thank you screen at the end, and also send them to a place where they can leave their email and get in contact with you. That's the survey Canva. Good luck with your survey Canva. I love to do it with little post-its, so that you put post-its in here. So you ask the question, you also say, you know, is this a multiple choice or a checkbox, and put it here. And then once you've done it, you can move things around, etc. So I love doing it with little post-its. And then feel free to download the worksheet that's in the notes here. And good luck.